This podcast is sponsored by BPI Exam Prep and Rater Exam Prep, the two fastest ways to self-study and certification. More at bpiexamprep.com and raterexamprep.com. Enjoy. Welcome to the Building Performance Podcast from Green Dream Group in Chicago. I'm Corbett Lunsford, and today we're talking about trends in high-performance building and retrofits in California with a huge group of people. We have Gavin Healy and Dan Perunko from Balance Point Home Performance. Guys, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you.
We have Mike MacFarland and Brian Tyrrell from Energy Docs. Guys, thank you very much for being on the program.
Thank you, sir.
We have Natalie Freidberg and Scott Nyborg from Home-ology. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We have Caroline Veerman from Loisos Design. Caroline, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And we have the Judy Rachel, who apparently everyone wants to hire because she is between companies right now. Judy, thank you for being here.
We're not between companies. I have my own company. They just don't want me.
Okay, cool. So if you're listening to this and you want to hire Judy Rachel, she is available at, and your email address is. All right, so here we are in California. We're at the ACI Regional Home Performance Conference in California, and you guys are all Californians, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, tell the rest of the world what it is like to be in the home performance industry in California. Silence.
There's infinite opportunity because despite the fact that we have some of the strictest energy code in the nation, we build some of the worst buildings in the nation.
Can you elaborate?
Because we think that our energy codes protect us and make us build better buildings, yet our climate doesn't give builders the type of signals that you would get in, say, a place like Minnesota or Florida, where if you put in, say, a really leaky can light into an attic, you would get a much more visible signal instantly related to perhaps an ice dam or something like that. Those sort of things might occur in Lake Tahoe, but not in many places in California, and so we end up making a series of really poor decisions, and we don't get feedback, particularly as builders, around those decisions, and they get deferred and pushed off to customers, and the customers don't know what to do or why it's related to their building assemblies.
Interesting. That actually points to, there's a session that you guys are doing tomorrow morning called Home Performance with No Climate. So how do you exactly sell home performance services when people can't really tell the difference between inside and outside?
Oh, but they can.
They can, and I think that's kind of one of the I guess dangers, for lack of a better word, that Gavin's talking about. Is when you are working in a mild climate, it's easy for homeowners to sort of learn to get along with buildings that are actually performing really terribly, and so. We not only don't get the feedback cycle from the building itself, but we also aren't getting feedback from the building occupants because they can manage. It's not like a winter in Minnesota where you literally just kind of can't make it through the winter if you can't heat the building. It's possible to sort of make do with what is actually really terrible performance. And so, part of what we want to talk about with that session and others tomorrow is how do we deal with sort of the unique challenges of what is, arguably a mild climate, but not one without its significant and important performance challenges.
We actually do get complaints about comfort, but we sort of have to ask for them a lot of times, in the sense that people think that it's okay for the upstairs of their house to be much warmer than the downstairs. They think that's normal. And it's only when you start asking specific questions that they'll usually admit that it's not comfortable and that there are rooms that they're not able to use.
Right, or that they're incredibly cold in the winter, but, so they just deal by putting on sweaters. They're not going to die, but they're incredibly uncomfortable.
These sound like lovely people, by the way. I want to meet them.
But, when you go into a client's house and you notice a pile of blankets on the couch, and
they live in Los Angeles.
They live in Los Angeles, and they think it's okay to watch TV with blankets because that's the way they've always done it. Because the house, it's very shaded and it's cold downstairs.
And that's what we've been told by the utilities. Is that's the way to live. That's okay to live. Put on extra sweaters, throw on a blanket, and that your house. There's no thought that houses could actually be comfortable.
So you think part of your job here is to train people to be more picky about things and to be more demanding of their homes?
Just to be more educated and informed about being actually comfortable. If somebody goes out and buys a car and the tire's out of balance, what do? They take it back to the dealer because they notice that it's out of balance. Well, we've been so desensitized to actual comfort in our homes, we allow that unbalanced tire, so to speak, in our homes to not bother us anymore. And I think that we can make such a huge impact to fix that unbalanced tire as home performance contractors and educate those people that, hey, you can live in your house and be really comfortable. We're going to spend a hell of a lot more time than you are in your car.
Mm-hmm.
We sat in a multi-million-dollar home near Beverly Hills and spoke with the owner who wanted us to use his previous heating and cooling contractor on another project. And I pointed out to him that the person who had done his house had installed a system that was so hugely oversized that it was coming on and off frequently, probably every 10 minutes while we were sitting there. And my feet were cold and my head was hot, and I bet him that his wife complained about it all the time. And he admitted it.
How much money did you bet him? You bet him the job. I bet you all of the work that we're about to do for you. How do you guys do marketing?
Well, part of it is that our climate is definitely more significant down here. We've got about 5,600 heating degree days in the foothills of the Sierra. So when you say California, it's often easy to think about LA, but we have lots of parts of the state where we get 70 to 80 degree temperature swings between day and night and rack up some significant heating and cooling, where Mike's from gets up to 113 degrees in the summertime with significant cooling loads. We get snow. So California is a really diverse state with a lot of climatic challenges related to microclimates. And you might have within the Bay Area, for instance, your shading aspect elevation could change 30 times within a 3-block area, and that all creates interesting.
I don't even know what that means, what you just said. That's how not from California I am.
So we had a job 2 winters ago where midwinter we walked off the 3rd floor deck and just walked out onto the snow. And, so, yeah, see, now we got it. 3 stories of snow.
That is a lot of snow, in case you're just doing the math.
But, on the days we didn't get snowed in and have to sleep at the job, when we drove home, there was no snow. And so those are microclimates, right? Like blizzards over here 5 miles away. The people who can't see me can see me gesturing, right? So
he's pointing over that way.
Yeah, like over there we have huge accumulations of snow, and then literally half an hour drive away there's none.
Huh.
And so we have these really weird, dramatic climate differences.
And to someone like me who's obsessed with home performance, I think, well, the solution to all of that we're describing is home performance contracting. Do people see the need for your work? Or are you competing against conventional contractors and having to struggle to do that?
We're definitely not competing against conventional contractors. In fact, when we get a call and somebody asks us to, say, just insulate or try and provide a bid for an HVAC system, of which we do all of our own installation work in-house, we oftentimes try and ask probing questions to find out what they're wanting. If what they want is just the lowest of 3 bids, we refer them to somebody else, because that's not what we're interested in doing. What we're interested in doing is providing measurable results that are different from what's occurred before. Mm-hmm. And it's part of what keeps us going into these grim attic spaces and crawl spaces and doing this type of work is the excitement of tracking outcomes and revising our plans to get better at what we do based on that data.
Cool. Caroline, you are a certified professional building designer, which this is a new one on me. That means that you mostly work in designing homes for people, right?
That's right.
Okay, like an architect. You have a whole bunch of codes that are all your own in California. You guys are not on the International Energy Conservation Code. You have an entirely different set of rules that are going on out here. Is that a hindrance to you, or do you like that they make it very clear what you're expected to do here?
Well, the thing that comes to mind first about the codes is that it's a requirement to have the house meet a certain standard, but it doesn't meet a comfort level standard. So, in my opinion, yes, we have these measures that are in place to provide what others might see as strict measures to meet, or increases in cost. But the ultimate goal is to provide comfort for the homeowner. And I don't think that the minimum code standards meet that at the moment.
Would you suggest specific changes that would address those?
One that I would strongly suggest is verifying installation of materials other than a HERS rater signing that off. For instance, installation is probably one of the most trades that are not installed correctly. And so that's where we get a lot of air leakage or air infiltration.
But isn't that verified by like a thermal bypass inspection and a blower door test, or is that?
That's not a mandatory verification. That is one that can be chosen, and since it's so hard to pass, it is always our energy modelers are always making every effort to not include that as one of the measures.
Which specific thing is not required again?
The QII, the quality of installation of insulation.
Or a blower door test.
Yeah, and the blower door test is not a mandatory, one of our mandatory measures.
What is required on the HVAC side?
Duct leakage testing and refrigerant charge, and in certain climates, fan watt draw. And then there's a few visual.
But you don't have to do a blower door test.
Essentially, the process is if you're building a new building that you go to somebody who does Title 24 calculations, and you get them to write a plan that passes the building under the least compliant measure possible with the least amount of verification process possible for the cheapest cost possible. And some people confuse this with designing an energy efficient building, which it's absolutely not. Mostly when we do our load calculations, those calculations that they're doing for that process come out at double or triple what we find the building's actually taking if we go out and measure it in the field.
Wow. And I think add to that the issue that you're showing compliance with software models that are overly simplistic and not really capable to the task of truly giving us even a close approximate of the energy performance of the building. And there's an industry of people who've gotten good at gaming those models, so it's quite possible and easy even to show compliance, on the part of a building that really is a performance dog. It's just, and it begins to have very little to do with the actual building. What it is a paperwork and software step that is not closely coupled to actual on the ground performance of the building in question.
Other thoughts about new construction here as opposed to retrofits from the rest of you guys?
New construction is just a retrofit that hasn't happened yet.
That you just blew my mind. What you're saying, and forgive me if I'm reading too much into what you just said.
It's called job security.
But the state...
There's no correlation between the age of the building or what code it was built on and its energy performance.
Okay, so you guys are obviously not super into the codes that you are having to build to. What would you improve about them if you had the legislation in front of you and you started changing things?
Not a ton. Mostly the codes are well, I'd love to see the third-party rating process go away because the expense is just done. What's that?
The HERS.
The HERS program. I'd like to see that go away.
And just to be perfectly clear, you're talking about
California.
The California HERS, which is
Right.
different than,
Right. So in California, instead of having building departments inspect the energy features, we have HERS raters do it, and it's a required expense for the homeowners. And the inspections are all based at levels of compliance that are, the equipment could still be broken, unfunctional, and pass because the compliance levels are low, but it's an expensive process to put the homeowner through. So I'd just love to see us drop it. Outside of that, code is the worst thing you're allowed to do by law, and so we don't pay a ton of attention to it. We're always trying to build better than that.
So would you rather be crawling around, Gavin, in your crawl spaces and attics, retrofitting the new houses that you're saying require the retrofits just like the older houses, or would you rather get it right the first time? What's your preference, new construction or improvements?
Retrofit.
I think there's a lot of opportunity being missed in our new construction.
And I'm not interested in paving the planet, so I'd rather do retrofits.
The Judy Rachel.
Yes. I think that I think there needs to be something put in place for new construction to stop this process from happening. Even though it's good for us, job security, but it's ridiculous. The cost effectiveness of doing it at new construction versus retrofit to do it at new construction is such a small initial investment for such a big gain versus a retrofit, which can cost, it just depends. I don't know.
And with the current shortage of home performance contractors, I think we all still have job security.
Yeah, I think we're going to be okay.
Why are there, I've heard that several times today at the conference, that there's just not enough contractors in California. It's California. Like, you guys are supposed to be the, place where all this stuff happens. What's going on?
So first of all, whatever we say we're doing and we send out past the borders, you should just disregard it.
You mean stuff doesn't blow up and robots aren't running around all the time?
Exactly.
It's all propaganda.
I go to these conferences and these big, do it like California banners, and I just want to take them down.
Wow.
Yeah, no, don't do it like us.
And part of it is that false sense of security that having supposedly the strictest code in the nation, or one of them, gives people. If homeowners think that you're protected and you buy a house that is verified to this process, then you don't really have to do much more, and that can lead to really poor decisions, especially if during new construction what you're saying is give me a process where I can get all of what I want without having to change any of what I want. And that, so it leads to huge volumes of glass surface area and things that the code really didn't intend to have in place, but we want those features. We want 100 can lights. We want all of the skylights and the dormers and the architectural complexity, but we don't want to have to pay for addressing any of it. We don't want any of the consequences of those choices.
Okay, so what are we excited about in the next 5 or 10 years in the state of California?
All the opportunity that we have in homes.
I think that's what keeps me interested, is that, every time we walk into a front door, there's just so much great impact that we can have. The risk that we could walk into a home that we can't, do anything for is just so remote and so unlikely. So in a way, that's, I suppose you could look at that and get dejected, but I think, the better approach is to get excited about all the opportunity. And I think, that's neat to be able to kind of walk into anybody's front door in your operating territory and be able to offer real solutions that will change their quality of life. And that's what keeps me excited about it.
And to clarify, you guys are in a place where there is not always a huge delta T. So you've got, what we would think of as minimal demand from that, and you've got the one of a strict code kind of a mentality so that people think that they're protected, and you all work in the private market, is that right? Right. And you are all making it work. Yeah. That gives me hope. I love it.
One of the things that's interesting is do you think that it's easier for designers of, say, passive houses to come up with low-load heating systems to serve those houses, or harder than the traditional path of sticking a gas forced air furnace and an air conditioner in a place? I mean, that's the challenge that we have on all of our houses, is none of the equipment is manufactured to meet our loads, in particular our dry climate loads. Everything is manufactured for dehumidification on the air conditioner side. And so if we install that equipment, we need to adjust our installation parameters to really maximize it for the climate, and usually we have to go pretty far off the reservation to do it, outside of what the factory engineers or anybody will recommend. And so that's one of the most exciting parts to me, is that we don't have a lot of expertise that we can turn to outside of this small circle of people, and what we're experimenting with and tracking our results and pushing kind of the bleeding edge out here.
Awesome. The bleeding edge. Thank all you guys for being on the show.
I
really enjoyed it. You have been listening to the Building Performance Podcast from Green Dream Group in Chicago. I'm Corbett Lunsford. Tune in next time.